Hello, it's your local twink here, Charlie, to deliver you this message. Um, so DID, right? um, when people explain the cause, um, it seems like you hear all of these conflicting ideas and theories because on one hand you hear people say, okay, so you're a kid and you're this one person and then something really bad happens to you and then all these other people come off of you, right? And then on the other side you hear, okay, well, when everybody's a kid, they all have these little separate parts called ego states. At the ages of 6 to 9, they all integrate. However, people with DID, theirs just never integrates, and then that's what happens. But those theories seem to contradict each other and not make sense, especially whenever the latter theory is kind of assumed, and then people start talking about a core alter, the first one, when, Jesus Christ, the wind, do you hear that? Anyways, whenever it seems like there should be multiple cores, shouldn't there, if we all start with multiple ego states? Well, we're going to talk about it, so. Damn right. Okay. Okay, so core theory and the theory of structural dissociation. Core theory is what it sounds like. Core theory is the idea that when we're all kids, we are one person. I was born Charlie, and then something bad happens to us and our brain just goes boop, and then from us splits another person, and then suddenly Ginger's there and she's out there handling everything for me. It's the idea that alters are not equal to the core first personality. It is the idea that they split off of that personality. Now, the theory of structural dissociation has it that when we are all kids, we all have these little things called ego states. And they're little sections of your being that are responsible for different things. Like one section is responsible for playing, one is responsible for seeking affection from your primary caregivers, one is responsible for, seeking safety, one's responsible for eating, that kind of thing. And that's why kids only seem to be able to do one thing at once. We've all heard it. And then at the ages of 6 to 9, those little personality states will all integrate to form one cohesive personality. However, if the ego states disagree too much, for example, the ego state responsible for food sees primary caregiver as safe, but the ego state responsible for receiving love does not, then when it comes to the ages of 7 to 9 or 6 to 9, they can't integrate. And if a bunch of severe repeated trauma is inflicted between then the ego state that is best suited to handle the trauma will come forth and handle it. And so that the other ego states don't know about the trauma, so that they can still function and it won't be too much, there is an amnesic barrier placed between parts. Oftentimes. Or it cannot be there. It could just be an amnesic barrier for not feeling emotions, which is how my system was. I rarely got amnesia. But the thing that is blacked out between me and my alters is emotions. I can remember the trauma vividly, or maybe not vividly, but I can remember the trauma, but I simply don't care. It's just like it was happening to somebody else because, well, it was. But another alter in there is holding the emotions. So, structural dissociation, the alters split and there's an amnesic barrier oftentimes, or an emotional amnesic barrier in my case and for a lot of people's cases. And, the alter will develop the traits that, is best needed for it to survive. They just develop differently into different people. Everybody has these parts to some degree. However, people with DID or OSDD, their separation is just more extreme. You'll also see that in C-PTSD a bit. Theirs is more differentiated than somebody without. That was more neurotypical. But you're really only going to find separate identities in OSDD or DID. Now, the difference between this and core theory is core theory states that we all start with only one personality, while structural dissociation states that we start with multiple, and that we're all originally multiple. Now, which one of these things is true? Now, I can say as somebody that has studied this for a while, has DID, and has spoken closely with many people who have DID that structural dissociation is definitely way more on the money. Because I, Charlie, am the host. People often view the hosts as the core, the first one, the main one, because they take the legal name of the body oftentimes, and they oftentimes identify with the gender assigned at birth, etc., etc. However, the host is no different than any other alter. The only difference is that the host's job is to deal with everyday life. And because of that, that is the reason why oftentimes they take on the legal name, is because that's the thing that's expected of them. That's their job. That is their job as an alter, is to take the legal name and represent the body and keep yourself functioning and going to, school or work every day and getting things done. That is the host's job. It's not that the other alters are made specifically to protect the host, like core theory would state. The alter and the host and everybody in the system are all designed to protect each other. You as the host are just as much to protect the other alters as they are to protect you, because your job as a host is to go and function and look okay so that the other alters can be protected. You are there to protect them too. So you're not greater than them, and you are not the core. You are just the alter that was assigned to take on the legal name. Not that you as a core or as a host have to take on the legal name. That just oftentimes is the case, and that oftentimes is the argument, or at least the reasoning behind people assuming that the host is the core or the host is the main one. So, this shit is good. Anyways, my job is to handle everyday life. My job is to appear okay. It's to take the body's legal name, even though I don't. But before integrations, whenever I still did use the body's legal name, I did. So it's just, it doesn't work like that. I don't know how to explain this in its entirety, but we all have these little separated parts. DID peoples are just more separated. We all have little parts of us that feel more little and parts of us that feel bigger. Doesn't mean you have to say you go into little space, because not everybody does that, but there is a part of you that's more vulnerable and probably more based on you as a kid. Everybody has this thing. It's not that hosts are just normal people with other people split off from them. We all have parts. People with DID is just more separated. Now, a question I've always had is, when, say you have a system and they fully integrate into one person, is that the host adding on parts until they become just as capable as a neurotypical normal person? Or is the host itself, with all of the alters separated, just as capable as a neurotypical person, and then whenever the parts get added on and more traits are added onto them, they become more capable than a neurotypical person? Basically asking, is a host without the alters integrated just as whole as somebody without DID and without alters? It's really hard to pinpoint, and I think as hosts of systems, you are likely going to be more dysregulated than most people are, because you're going to have like this whole disorganized attachment style thing going. It's going to be all over the place, usually. Not saying you can't be functional, but DID is hard to live with, even if you're the host and even if you don't hold the trauma. But I do think you become more capable than a neurotypical person if you fully were to integrate. Because you learn to recognize more parts of yourself, and you learn to know yourself way more than a neurotypical person will ever give themselves the opportunity to do. Because all of these alters have been split off from you so that they can develop their own skills in full and be super capable. So once they conjoin with you, you can't lose that skill. So it just gets added on to you. Fusing in DID is like, it's not just a bunch of shit you have to go through for nothing. You don't have to do it, of course. Functional multiplicity is great, works amazing. You know, DID is created for a reason. Like, it obviously helps with something. So if that's the route you want to go, then go there. But I think that when you're not, if you do fully integrate, it's not just work you do for nothing, not for nothing, but it's not just work you do to get to the same place that a neurotypical person is. I mean, it is functional wise, but I don't want people to think that they went through all that trauma and then they went through all that work to heal just to be at the baseline that everybody else is at. Because I do think that if you were to do that, you would be more cognitively flexible than most people. Because your cognition has had to bend so much that you can't lose that wiggle room that you made. You can integrate the alters, you can conjoin it, but you can't lose the wiggle room. And so I think that if you were to fully integrate, you would have a lot more wiggle room than a neurotypical person would. And it's probably not that way for everybody. It really depends on the person. But I think most of the time it'd probably be like that. So, and that conclusion would also, on top of it, I forgot. Anyways, yeah. Structural dissociation is just kind of the generally accepted theory in the community, but I still hear people explain it like it's core theory when it's not, and people still use the term core. Who's the core in your system? Who's the first one? Well, there's like 5 first ones. I don't know. I mean, there are some that split off later, but there are multiple first ones because there were multiple first ego states. There has to be at least 2 cores if we're following that logic. There has to be at least 2 first people. So, I don't know who the goddamn core is. So, the concept of a core is kind of harmful for that reason. And the concept of a main alter is kind of harmful for that reason. And the concept that alters are these tools that were made to protect the host. My alters were created to protect me. I mean, that's true. But you have to acknowledge that you were created to protect your alters as a host. And that means that your alters weren't really created. They're just kind of there. You know, like you're just kind of there as a host. So the other alters that were part of your original ego state group, they weren't really created. They're just kind of there. They just kind of developed separately. I mean, obviously you didn't come out of the womb with like a 27-year-old in your brain. But just as you developed as a person from 0 to age 3 coming out of the womb, you might have had another ego state develop as a person. And it might have happened on a different timeline, but they were always there. And, yeah. I just don't like the narrative that all of the alters were created to protect one alter. Because hosts are designed to protect their system, too. Hosts are kind of protectors. They're made to save face. They're made to appear neurotypical. They're made to function. They're made to take the legal name. They're made to get the body where it needs to go. They're made to fit people's expectations of them. They're made to look like everybody else and blend in. And they convince themselves that they are like everybody else and that they do blend in because that's their job. And that's often why accepting you have DID is so hard in a host, because it's your job to not accept it. It is your job to deny it. It is your job to think that you're normal. it's your job to be in denial. Just like another alter might be in denial that they're part of a system, a host might be in denial that they're part of a system, except it's in opposite ways. That alter thinks something else is going on. That alter thinks that they are themselves. Actually, it's the same thing. You think you're yourself. You think you're normal. It's kind of a head fuck. I don't even know if I'm explaining it the right way, but you know what I mean? I'm kind of just talking out loud at this point, but I'm having fun, so I'm going to keep doing it. But yeah, I have a job just as much as everybody else does. And before prior integrations, me as a host, the way I saved face and took on my job and functioned normally was becoming somewhat of a people pleaser or a pushover. Is because I had to appear normal to other people and just go with things, I just went with things. But then, as integrations happened, I learned that in order to represent your body effectively as my job, which now that I know that this is my job and that my alters aren't just here for me, I'm here for them, I can take on my job with pride and I can say, I am the host of this system. My job is to take me and my people where we need to go, which is another thing that's good to have as a host is, instead of just being like, oh, you guys are here for me, what? You have to be like, oh, I'm here for them too. I have a job and my job is also to protect them. I learned that in order to represent the body effectively and to represent and help your people most effectively as a host, that you have to learn how to say no to. And any systems out there, I'm not the oldest system out there. I'm really not. I'm 19, I'm a youngin', but I have integrated pretty rapidly. And I think that part of that was me accepting that this is my job too, is that I'm not just a normal person and there's these people in my head that I have to deal with. I'm one of the people in my head that they have to deal with me. And I have a job. And jobs are hard and jobs are stressful, but we'd also die if we never had any jobs in our life because we'd feel useless. So my advice for hosts out there who want to be more functional, whatever you want to do, just be more functional, is to enjoy your job and to take pride in your job and to take pride in being the figurehead of the body, because that is your job, is you're like the HR person, you're the representative. HR person? You are human resources and you do deal with the humans, but anyways.